My friends, good day. You know, I talk to a lot of people and I realize that what ruins lives, sometimes for generations, are beliefs. These are often called limiting beliefs, but you can use any term you prefer. But these are beliefs that people hold, but they're not built on anything solid or real. Or, in a less serious case, these are beliefs that were valid a long time ago but haven't been reviewed or corrected. The world is changing and evolving rapidly, which unsettles many people. And if we have beliefs that were valid in 1985, but, well, it's today, I mean, it's high time to review them. If you look at social classes, you'll notice that many people who come from modest families will also have a modest life. If the father or mother were unemployed for a long time, struggling to make a living and all that, you'll see that statistically the children are more likely to, right? Than, for example, children born with a silver spoon in their mouth. You see, that's something else. Those ones, they'll move up more easily. In fact, some people talk about heritocracy. Exactly, it means those who manage to inherit, right? Fortunes, assets, all that. Well, they'll make it in life and have the opportunity to enslave others. But beyond inheritance and all that, which you can understand when you inherit a big address book, connections, real estate, all that, it's clear that life, all things being equal, is going to be easier. But it's more than that. There's something else. There are often limiting beliefs that people have in their minds, and these beliefs can derail a life. Derail a person's life, but also derail the life of their offspring. Because often there is a transmission from generation to generation of a number of stories, negative stories, defeatist stories, stories that don't make sense. Aside from keeping the children's heads underwater, just as they kept their parents' heads underwater. Let me tell you something. One of the beliefs that absolutely needs to be reconsidered when living in Europe is the idea that Europe is very evolved, very advanced and developed. All of that is over. I say this with bitterness, but it's something we must accept today. It's a choice. Europeans haven't become third world countries because they're incapable or because they don't work hard enough or because they don't study enough. That's not it at all. It's a choice that was made by their elites. Their ruling elites decided at some point, without consulting anyone, without any referendum, without even a national debate or discussion, to ruin the European countries. They decided that European countries must leave the group of developed nations and become just countries of the third world, for lack of a better term, because third world actually has a fairly precise definition in historical terms. So the term third world isn't appropriate, but we're going to have to come up with a new word. A new word to describe nations that have still reached the peak of their development, and who one day people were made to feel guilty and we went off into completely nonsensical speeches. Who actually did that? Because, you know, the problem is that when you have European countries that are at their core fundamentally of a Christian culture, you can quite easily make them feel guilty. They respond well to that, while other countries don't care. Look, me, you know where I come from, you know my origins, right? I was born in Algeria, you look at my roots. You will find plenty of people, you will find Maghribis, you will find Berbers, you will find Arabs. Most people you'll find are Muslims, though with effort you might find other religions too. And for example, you can always talk to me about my ancestors and you say they did this or that thing. On a scale from 0 to a billion, my guilt is a billion, right? It's exactly 0. You see what I mean, right? It's not even measurable. You're not going, I will if you want. I'm responsible for my actions from birth until today. Something that happened even just 3 months before I was born or even during my time on Earth. But that was done by other people. I'll say I can certainly regret it, but I'm not going to feel guilty, all right? While I have this impression, maybe people will come and contradict me in the comments. I still feel that Europeans especially are quite sensitive to guilt-inducing talk. So that has been a psychological tool that was used to push him to accept his lasting decline, to accept the destruction of his living environment, to impoverish him, and then transfer his jobs, transfer his know-how. If you look at China, even today, you have to be fair. You can't be a sore loser either. China, in those years, if you look at its recent history, if you look at the 1950s and 60s, there were famines and millions died from lack of food. At a certain point, you look at Europe. The United States decided to transfer their know-how, but also their jobs, their patents, their financial flows, their manufacturing secrets to China. So that allowed China to get a foothold. And then afterwards, well, it greatly developed all these technologies, and then it far surpassed the Europeans, the Americans, and so on. So I'm not trying to say that the Chinese today are practicing European knowledge. No, European knowledge today is like that of an Amazon tribe compared to current achievements, okay? But again, it was a choice. It's not that Europeans were stupid. It's not that Europeans weren't hardworking or anything like that. It's a choice that was made for them while they were sleeping. It was decided to ruin them. It was decided that for them, civilization stops here. The march, the train of civilization stops. They have to get off. It's over. It's very serious, very grave to say, but you can check it yourself. A situation, and I'm telling you, a limiting belief is that many Europeans still live with this belief that Europe is so perfect. It's so good that if we suffer at home, if things aren't going well at home, if there's corruption at home, if there's filth, if there's insecurity, if there's mass unemployment, if there's inflation, threats of war, all of that, and that we are so perfect, it means that elsewhere in the world it must be worse. Europe represents the height of human civilization and perfection if we discuss this principle. Everything that is not Europe is inferior to Europe, obviously, you see. If we start from that mindset, well, whatever we experience, no matter how much suffering we have in Europe, we'll say, fortunately we're here, fortunately we're at home. You see what I mean? That's it. You have to move away from that, my friends, and really get rid of it. What it really does to you, honestly, is as if an enemy had invaded you, had done what your leaders, democratically elected, have done to you. We would be talking about it. The books would be full of it. We would be talking about a crime against humanity, not even against humanity, but against historical civilization. A truly historic crime. Except, well, there you go. The fact is that today it's something that went by unnoticed, like a letter in the mail. And what we're seeing in Europe is not just temporary passing crises. It's a deliberate decline, chosen, decided, and imposed on the population. The problem is there's a strong chance that it might be irreversible. And maybe what I'm saying isn't very Christian, but it could be irreversible. Do you know why? Because, look, when China was in famine, well, Americans and Europeans came. They said, we're going to transfer millions of jobs to you. We're going to transfer the financial flows that go with them. The know-how, the patents, the secrets, everything. We're going to give you everything. You see what I mean? That's a gift from heaven. Will there be the same deal for Europeans? You see what I mean? Will there be someone who will show up, a country that will show up one day and say, you know, poor Europeans, I will create mass unemployment in my country. You see what I mean? I will close my factories. I will destroy my economy because it's good. You see, because I feel guilty. You understand? There you go. I saw some pictures. I saw a bear that died. I saw an ice cube melting. I saw the Pope blessing a piece of ice. Do you understand? After thinking, I decided to destroy my civilization and pass everything to you. See? That's not the kind of speech. That's not a speech that exists in nature or in history. The only time it existed was when the Europeans decided to destroy themselves. You see? So I told you today, the only thing I can tell you is get out of there. If you can, leave. Really, just go, because you've only seen the beginning. What exists in Europe today is what we see as problematic. You know, there was an ad made for ACFA, the film brand, by Gainsbourg. You know, Gainsbourg. He always had messy hair, a 3-day beard, you know, always looking worn out, sleepless nights, all that. He takes some pictures and says, ACFA, warning, you'll regret your current face in 10 years. So I want to tell you that 2025 for Europe, even though it doesn't look very promising, we agree, it doesn't look great, but in 10 years, we'll regret how things are today. All right? Because there's a deliberate destruction. So it's a belief I really wish you would get out of your head. You need to get out, you need to visit other countries in the world. We really need to stop thinking that, well, we are perfect. Honestly, it's a belief that's holding a lot of people back. You see, I'm here in Dubai, for example. I know that the forest of skyscrapers might not be to everyone's taste. I get it, I understand, I'm not criticizing. Some people prefer the beach, others like mountain landscapes, and some prefer pebbles. Everyone has their preferences, you know, tastes and colors. Well, that's not up for debate. But when you look today, there are countries being built in the desert. Back there, 30 years ago behind me, it was complete desert. Today, it's been built up. There are international companies, people worldwide, and entrepreneurs. And actually, I'll tell you something. For example, I'll just tell you something. You know, here in Dubai, women, by the way, in terms of clothing, you're going to have outfits. That wouldn't be allowed in Europe, honestly, in terms of transparency and all that. That's not possible. You wouldn't see them in Europe. Another thing here, women don't walk with their heads down. You know what I mean? Here, women are present. You run into a woman in the elevator, she might smile. You can even exchange a few words, and it's all natural. Why? That won't happen to you in France or the United Kingdom. It's just not like that. That woman you just ran into, it's 2 p.m. in the elevator. She left home at 9 a.m. She's endured hours of harassment and insults. So when you see her in the elevator, she's already defeated, keeping her head down. She just wants to disappear. She just wants to press herself against the wall. She just wants to endure her humiliation and not exist. You see, that's not the case here. A lot of Europeans, Americans, all of them come to live here. And I talk to some of them, and honestly, they would never go back. They say, I'm not being harassed. There are no people attacking me. There are no people assaulting me. I can go out at night, during the day, all that. I'm not afraid anymore. I don't spend half my brain just worrying about my safety. I can leave my phone and bag on the table while I go to the restroom in a restaurant. I don't need to take all that with me. I don't need to be constantly afraid, you see? So it's another way of life that's developing across the planet, not just here. This is just an example for you. Here, the taxes are close to zero. There are some, but they're extremely low, almost zero in most cases. Actually, you see, there are people who asked me in France, do they even have roads in Dubai? When I said there were no taxes, they asked if there were roads. I don't know if you can see behind me. It's not just roads they have roads, they have airports, they have everything. Even the stores you find in France and the United Kingdom, they have the same ones here, but more developed, more advanced. What I mean is that the French, because they were lied to when they were children, when your young child asks you this, what are taxes for? You're going to answer yes. Well, it's to build roads and to build bridges and all that. That's not true. That's not true. You know that's not true. It's so that the ruling class can use them for their food expenses, taxi fares, personal enrichment, and discretionary spending. You know that? It's picked up. It's picked up at the top. So here he has another way of living, quite simply. There's another deal. There's another way. Not the whole planet lives. Let me tell you something. It's not the whole planet that's living. Going out in the morning, you see migrant tents, face harassment on every corner, and get fined by police. They were 5 km over the speed limit. And then, at the same time, they pay taxes, skyrocketing taxes. Half of the money, half of the national gross domestic product is spent by the state, right? They're in debt up to their necks, 3,400 billion. And then when they go to the hospital, there's no room. When they go to the hospital, there's no room. if the police have no resources when called? Is that the civilizational agreement everyone accepts? Do you think all of humanity lives in this civilizational deal? Do you think all of humanity accepts to live in those conditions? All right? In the era of servitude, in the era of feudalism, people didn't give as much of the product of their labor, didn't give to their lord. Isn't that so? As much as many Europeans give to their state today, tentacular states that are completely disconnected from the national interest, completely disconnected from the popular will. All they do is create laws, regulations, and taxes. I mean, that's why, my friends, I don't want to say too much, but I can tell you something. Get out of here. Stop thinking there's no solution. I'll finish with this. There are two kinds of bars. You have the methane bar. You can actually keep a prisoner in a cell. He has a metal bar, and right here, he's cutting it to escape. That's one situation, but there's another one. It's the metal bar that's in your head. That bar doesn't exist in reality, but in your head, you see bars, they're bars. If you push your hand forward like this, you'll see it goes right through. That they're virtual, that they don't exist. They're holograms of bars. And these bars, which in your mind, will hold you back, will break you. And most of your misfortunes, most of your troubles, your failures come from these virtual bars that you have in your mind. And then what you're going to do, and this is the worst part, you're going to pass them down generationally, you're going to pass them on to your children. When you've worked and you leave a little money to your children, you leave them a house or an apartment or whatever, or a bit of cash in the account. The state comes and takes half, as if it hadn't already taken enough. As if every euro that was in your account when you died wasn't in reality from maybe 10 euros that you earned, that you worked for in your life, and only one was left. And then he says, come on, give me half again. You see, that's not the same everywhere. You can own the tower behind me. If you die, your children inherit it completely with no cost to them, okay? You see what I mean? Not all the people on earth are like that. In the service of a pharaoh, of a state that has become a pharaoh. In fact, you are pharaohs. Sometimes when they built the pyramids, you know that sometimes there were stones. They found crushed skeletons under stones. Why? Because there were situations where it had to be done. There was no choice. Someone had to sacrifice themselves to keep the stones balanced as they were placed. And for them to stack on each other. Well, someone would have had to sacrifice themselves, go remove the wedges, and then get crushed. People once suffered individually, but now entire lives are destroyed, so millions serve the state. They wake up, separated by the commuter train, ruin their lives, age and go gray early, then die. We work, don't we? Why? They live with anxiety. Who takes the most anti-anxiety medication on this planet? Who? Is it the people here? Is it the people in the Philippines? Who takes the most anti-anxiety medication on this planet? The French antidepressants, it's the same, isn't it? They have records for medication, and what do? Just to go and hand over the fruit of their labor to a sprawling state. I mean, my friends, I see you from the outside. You're in a situation of slavery. I mean, it's honestly the early 1800s. We're on a cotton plantation. That's how I see you. And I assure you that if you get out of that environment, that's how you'll see yourselves. And you'll never have the chance again. It's a motorcycle, it's a big city. What do you want? It's perfect, nowhere agreed, right? But well, in Paris, you have urban rodeos and more than 50% of your time and income goes to the state. Well, 50% that's official, that's the official number. Actually, when factoring in all deductions at various levels, it's closer to 90%. Anyway, my friends, I'll leave you, and the advice I can give you is get out of here. See you very soon.